Good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, I can see some very familiar names. All right, welcome to part three. Okay, before we begin, is there anyone who is absolutely new to internal audit and you are starting from part three itself? Okay, so you've studied part one as well as part two. Some of you I know, of course. Have you studied part one and part two both? And then we are falling in part three. Can I assume that?
No, sir. Starting with part three.
Okay, Aishwarya, you're starting with part three. Uh, so any previous experience in internal audit?
No, completely new. But I did start the course few years back, and then I've rejoined again. So.
Okay, so when you started a few years back, did you start with part one?
Yes, I
Oh,
did.
so you have a fair bit of understanding about the conceptualities of internal audit, right?
Yes.
Fair.
Yeah, hi. Even I'm starting from part three, but I've worked in internal audit extensively.
Fair. So you also have fair bit of experience in
Yes.
internal.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So under the old curriculum, part three had nothing to do with internal audit. It was like a mini MBA. You had leadership as the concepts, motivation as the concepts, behavior as the concept, accounting, financial management, IT, cost accounting, everything of this sort was there because uh, part three in the previous curriculum focused on making you well versed with the business acumen, right? Because they thought that since you are working as professionals, right, and you're auditing, you ought to have a fair bit of exposure to all the other business acumen concepts. Uh, Under the new curriculum, this 2025 curriculum, everything which was not audit has been removed. And this entire part three has been made an extension of part one and part two. All right. So in part one, under the new curriculum, we have a lot more concepts that were there in the previous curriculum. Part two is still the most extensive one. Coming on to part three, which will talk more from an internal audit function perspective. All right. It's only 6 modules. Part three is not very extensive as it used to be. It's only 6 modules, right? So I don't think we should face any challenge when we're talking about part three at least. So let's see. Let's see how it goes. Let's start with the first module. We'll introduce internal audit function, not in a way that was there in part one, but some responsibilities of the CAE. All right. So moving on to the first module, guys. Now it says the global internal audit standards. You know, in the under the new curriculum, this term has been replaced. The global it's been made the global internal audit standards. Earlier it was IPPF. All right. So the global internal audit standard states that the CAE is responsible for managing the internal audit function. Obviously, we know that, right? As the head of the audit, the CAE is responsible for managing that internal audit function. And the responsibility includes strategic planning, obtaining and deploying the resources, building the relationships, communicating with the stakeholders, and ensuring and enhancing the performance of the function. Now, my first question to you guys is, suppose you are working as an internal auditor in my company. Let's suppose I have a company and you work as an internal auditor in my company. Now, while working as the internal auditor in my company, what are the various communications that you think you would be required to make to the management, let's say me, at various places and various times? So, what are those communications? It says that you have a responsibility of communicating with the stakeholders as well, right? So, what are those communications which you might be making to me?
Any process gap that needs improvement?
Please
Audit,
elaborate.
maybe audit announcement memo with all the
Interesting.
scopes.
Interesting. Audit announcement memo. Okay, so for people who are very relatively new to audit, can you please elaborate what is an audit memo?
Yeah, this audit announcement memo is the introductory email sent to the stakeholders and maybe the interested parties, making them aware of what are the audits we are going to perform and what will be the tentative scope. Though we might not have a full scope identified during the audit announcement memo, but then we'll let them know what are the areas we are going to cover, and we will ensure that the stakeholders are aware of um, independency and the impairment that the auditors might have, and they might look for all the information around this space for the audits.
And perfect. And why do you think we should be giving this announcement memo to the stakeholders? Why can't we just do a surprise audit? We come to the office, surprise, surprise, audit time. Why can't we do that?
Uh, this to ensure that the stakeholders are aware of and having good chance for them to come up with the self-identified issues within these areas, so that we don't need to spend too much of time. It's just we will validate those self-identified issue and give some credits to them, for identifying the issues on their own, and that will be helpful for them to get themselves scheduled for us to provide their time and the relevant information for this audit.
Oh, wonderful. It also helps in control self-assessment, the CSA process.
Yes, yeah, control
Right?
self-assessment.
Wonderful. So control self-assessment was earlier a part of part two. Now it has been made a part of part one. All right. Fair enough, guys. Very good. So it's not a good practice to do a surprise visit. You need to intimate them beforehand that yes, now we are starting with the audit, and this is the audit announcement memo that he's talking about. Wonderful. So that is one level of communication. What else?
Audit charter and audit plan.
Audit charter. Okay, audit charter. Probably getting approved by the board, right?
Yeah.
Fair, fair, Vinay. Okay, somebody said process gaps also. So when you audit something, you find that there are deviations, there are discrepancies, there are gaps which might be material enough to be communicated to the management. Wonderful, wonderful. So you understand, right? So you are required to communicate with the stakeholders at a lot of different times during the process. Good. The CA is therefore responsible for monitoring internal audit operations to ensure that the established methodologies and resource commitments facilitate progress toward performance objective. This just says that you have to Keep in mind all of these considerations and make sure that the audit serves its purpose. All right. My next question to you is, can the CAE delegate some of the responsibilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, like what?
Execution of the part of the audit plan, for example, the audit
Okay.
manager is designated, and he or she supervises the particular process audits or the special audits, whereas the ultimate responsibility or accountability will vest with the CAE to the board.
Awesome. So, yes, you are allowed to delegate some of your responsibilities, but not the ultimate responsibility, right? The ultimate responsibility is still with the CAE. Very good. Then it says the CAE must establish methodologies to guide the internal audit function in a systematic and disciplined manner to implement the internal audit strategy, develop the internal audit plan, and conform with the standards. The CAE must evaluate the effectiveness of the methodologies and update them as necessary to improve the internal audit function and respond to significant changes that affect the function. Uh, See, this just means that yes, you will be developing the audit plan, you'll be developing the audit strategy. We'll cover it in the coming modules. But do you think that just developing that plan and developing that strategy is just a one-time process? You've done it before the commencement of the audit, and that's it? No. We are living in a time when things are constantly changing. Tech is upgrading, new concepts are coming out. So all of these concepts have uh, some kind of risks while we are implementing those upgrades, right? So since everything has an impact as a risk to our organization, we are required to constantly update the plan or the standards. Right? It's not just that okay, एक बार कर लिया and that's it. No, with all the experience that we are getting, with all the new things coming up, we might be required to update the plan and the standards. The CAE must develop and conduct internal assessments of the internal audit function's conformance with the global internal audit standards and progress towards the performance objectives. Fair. Now, do you think ongoing monitoring is important while you're on the engagement, which includes the day-to-day supervisions, review, and measurement of internal audit function? Why do you think ongoing monitoring is very important?
This is to ensure that the audit is carried out as per the audit objectives and the scope that was laid down in the initial communication with the stakeholder or the member, and there's no deviations.
Absolutely. So let's take an example that you allocate me as the staff auditor on one of your engagements. Fair. Do you think there would be somebody at a higher position than me, let's designate that person as the audit manager, who would be required to supervise my work at all times? Obviously, right? You've seen the supervision happening in your day-to-day life. You've seen the reviews happening at various levels, right? Right from your senior to all the way up the partner level. You've seen that happening, right? So yes, ongoing monitoring is absolutely essential. Mechanisms used for monitoring the efficiency and effectiveness of internal audit functions include you can have the checklists. You can have the feedback from internal audit stakeholders, and you can have various metrics. right? For example, what you budgeted versus what is the variance that has come up. Okay. Now tell me something. And you might have faced this situation. The second point says the feedback from internal audit stakeholders regarding the efficiency and effectiveness of internal audit team. My first question, what internal audit stakeholders are we talking about? And my second question is, what if you were ever involved in a conflict between you and the management? Then how will the feedback work? Because the feedback will not be positive, right? So what do you think should be done in those cases? Yes, anybody who has faced this situation? Nobody.
As part of that internal audit process, actually, generally there are initial two levels. That is, one is the auditee level, so the head of that particular auditee division, and then the step up is the senior management, and then the board. So what happens is that, let's say, in a particular finding, there is a particular difference or a disagreement to a particular observation or a finding. So the
Yeah.
first is that if the auditees that is at the lower level of that particular department do not come in agreement, then it is escalated to the L1, that is we call the head of that department, during the exit meeting, because before finalization of the report, to check whether these are significant enough to go to the report or to be dropped, that is the first level where the discussion happens. And even after that, if it is not in agreement, then essentially we report it to the audit committee, because functionally we are reporting to the audit committee. Prior to that, if there is an opportunity to have a discussion with the vertical heads, then that is the level at which this resolution would try to happen, so that it is not directly going to the audit committee for every issue. And still, if it is unresolved, then it is definitely reported to the audit committee as a significant gap.
Awesome. So Anuradha talked about one very important concept in between. There was one sentence that she used, which I think the people who are new to audit are required to understand, that you as a CAE, right, you have a dual reporting relationship, yeah, or dual reporting responsibilities. So there are two reporting responsibilities which are there with you. Administratively, you report to the senior management. And when we're talking about the senior management, I'm talking about the CEO per se. And functionally, to the board. Right now, a lot of us who were there with me in earlier parts already know about this concept a lot. We have discussed it, a lot many times. But those who are new to this, admin, what we mean by administratively to the senior management is that, for any day-to-day challenges that you might face, you cannot knock the doors of the board every time, right? So you need somebody to listen to you when you're facing hurdles on a day-to-day basis, right? So that is administratively to the senior management. And while functionally to the board means, as a whole, internal audit department as a whole, let's say the independence considerations or the final reporting per se, the performance of internal auditing, what would be the scopes from the entire uh, function perspective, you are required to report functionally to the board, right? Fair. Now, the internal audit function assists an organization achieve its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve. So these are the two things coming up again right from part one, that you in as the internal auditor are required just to do these two things: evaluate something and recommend improvements on something, right? So evaluate and improve the keywords coming up again. The effectiveness of the GRC, the governance, risk management, and the control processes. So while you are working in your day-to-day life, you are required, you are more likely to hear the word GRC, right? All right. Now, we've talked about this a lot. This is again coming from the first module. What is governance? The processes, the structures, right? What's the risk management? It's the process where you identify the risk, assess the risk. Now, how would you assess the risk? Identify, okay, you identify all the risks. Now, once you identify all the risks, you don't start responding to all of those risks, right? You assess the risk first. Assess means you assess in terms of likelihood and impact, right? If it happens, what would be the impact and how likely it is that it will happen, right? After you assess, you prioritize which risk you want to respond to first, then you respond to that risk. All right. Then we have the control processes. That's the GRC. Now it says the CAE interviews the board and the senior management about the responsibilities of each stakeholder. Why? And this is very important, by the way. Why?
So that the CA can take up the audit with the right stakeholders. If they reach out to somebody who's not responsible for that function or the execution, he will not be able to contribute to the audit in a way that is required.
Fair. And also, if I am doing the audit, I need to know that, who is responsible for what. And, and this would also tell me that, okay, what would the other person be expecting out of the audit? Fair. And understanding of the organization is also necessary. Further, established frameworks published globally, for example, the COSO framework, may be used.
We lost you, Ayush.
I'm saying it says the COSO may be used in the internal auditor's evaluation of the three processes. Which three processes are we talking about?
Governance, risk
GRC.
management, and
The
control.
GRC, right? Very good. The GRC. The framework may be that adopted by the senior management. If the organization has not adopted such a framework, the CAE may recommend one. Fair. After discussing with the board and the senior management, the CAE may document in the internal audit charter the roles and responsibilities of the board, senior management, and the internal audit function. Very important word finally coming up. Internal audit charter. What is the internal audit charter, guys? And this is by far the most important document that you can have as the internal auditor. Right? What is a charter?
A detailed
So
internal
this
audit plan with defined objectives and stakeholders and their roles and responsibilities.
Plan.
internal audit charter provides the complete roles and responsibility of the internal audit team and their independence to the documents and the evidences, the access, I mean, independent access to all the required evidences within the organization for this audit.
Okay. Okay. So, okay, let's understand charter. This internal audit charter is the most important document that you can have. Now, this is a formal document which is approved by the board, and it has everything that is important with regards to you conducting the audit. It will have the engagements, it will have the scope that you will have, it will have your responsibilities, it will have your permissions, what are you who you can reach out to, what resources you can see, and everything, right? So that whenever you might have a conflict with the management that they are not allowing you to view or access a document, you can show them the charter that, boss, this is approved by the board. It's there in the charter. We are allowed to see that document, and you can go ahead and see that document, right? So that is the internal audit charter. It is, please make sure that you understand it is approved by the board. And when I say board and you say, can it be audit committee? It is one and the same thing, right? So these committees are basically the subcommittees of the board, right? So audit committee keh lo, board keh lo, it's one and the same thing. When determining the strategy for assessing the GRC, the CAE typically considers the maturity of these processes, the seniority of the persons responsible, and the organization culture. क्या मतलब हुआ इसका? Maturity of these processes मतलब? Let's say you are doing the internal audit for my company. It says, while determining your strategy for assessing my company's GRC, you will consider how mature are my processes. Why? How does that make a difference?
Process is evolved and is repetitively done, so it fairly has a stable structure, and the understanding of the people executing is quite fair. So the chances of any gaps is a little less. If there is a new process which has recently been introduced, there are chances of more gaps in that process.
So can I say that what you are implying is that when there is a process which is relatively new, more emphasis would be given on compliance aspects. While if there is a process which is fairly stable, matured process, the focus will shift to optimizations. Can I say that?
Correct, yeah.
Wonderful. The seniority of the person responsible, experience. Okay. And what is the culture in the organization? How do you think organizational culture affects your strategy for assessing the GRC of this company?
It is the tone on the top and the importance given to compliance that impacts the organizational culture.
हाँ एक एग्जांपल लेके बताओ.
I mean, where a process gap is given importance to and taken to improvement and is improved, and compliance is given importance versus something that is allowed to continue the way it is.
So as example. Okay, I will give an example. For example, there is, okay, for example, you visit my company as an internal auditor, and you come to know that nobody is complying with the policies. People are following unethical practices, right? The management themselves are overriding the controls that they've set. Now, when you try to audit my company, you would be having an entirely different strategy while you're auditing company B, where the management is very ethical. It's a very strict culture, no tolerance towards unethical practices culture. Everybody knows their job and everybody is complying with the policies, right? So these two companies might be in the same industry, might be that similar operations, might be everything is almost the same in the company. But your strategy will not be the same when you're auditing these two companies. Do you agree with this? You will have to put a lot more effort to audit my company. It will be a very extensive audit. Why? Why will it be more extensive when you're auditing me? Because you have the known instances of non-compliances, you have the known instances of unethical practices, you know management is overriding the controls. You can, basically, whatever you think can go wrong is going wrong in my company. And so obviously, you'll have to put a lot more effort in my company. Okay. And this was which law? I think Murphy's law or something like that. Whatever you think can go wrong, it will go wrong. Okay. Internal auditors may use their knowledge, experience, and best practices to provide findings of weaknesses and recommendations. Further, internal auditors should always be mindful of compliance. Where we know that. Okay. Reasonable assurance. Okay. Why can't you give an absolute level of assurance? See, there are two concepts, absolute assurance and reasonable assurance. अभी तक हम पढ़ते हुए आए हैं कि reasonable assurance ही दे सकते हो आप as an auditor. Why can't you give an absolute level of assurance?
Due to
Because the
inherent and
auditors,
residual risk.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one at a time. Yes, Suresh, you say first.
Yeah, so we normally do a risk-based audit, picking up the sample, not doing the 100%,
Okay.
and there are chances of we missing out some of these bad samples, during our testing. So we cannot do 100% or complete assurance here.
Okay. Yes, Sagar.
We cannot give absolute assurance also on account of residual risk and inherent risk which are there.
Reply. Okay. The inherent risk and residual risk. तो inherent risk है कंपनी में, इसीलिए तो आप respond कर रहे हो.
Even if I perform audit procedure, there will be supposed to be have some actual residual risk, which I could say, and the remaining residual risk. There is a concept. So if there is some residual risk that might go and impact something big also, the which I cannot see right now during audit process. So that is
That
why I
means
cannot.
that means what you are trying to say is that nobody can eliminate risk on 100% level,
Yeah, right.
right? There will be some kind of risk that will still remain, right? But यार वो risk तो management का हुआ ना. Management is responsible for implementing the controls. Risk अगर actual residual risk है तो वो तो management की problem है ना, आपकी problem का है.
But when we put some signal controls, it will affect the business, and the putting of such controls may not be cost effective also. So in that case, we should assure the reasonable risk.
Fair. Okay, coming back to the sample वाला point that you do the sample testing. But एक बात बताओ. Now that we are using data analytics, we have softwares for a lot of different things, right? So once we have that data analytics, we are using softwares, it is still possible to test 100%.
Yes, but still there will be some audit risk also. That even if I perform my audit procedures, some instances may skip from my observations, and that could have an audit impact.
Absolutely right. देखो क्या होता है, even if you test 100%, right, then also there is some kind of detection risk which is there. Now what is detection risk? uh, I don't want to get into that concept here, but let's talk about it on a very quick basis, right? So there is audit risk at the top. Now audit risk is divided into as of now, let's say, inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. So inherent risk क्या होता है? The risk which is there, based on the nature of operations, based on the complexity of the transaction, basically the risk that is there before you doing anything. Right? Control risk is the risk that the controls might fail. Okay. And detection risk is the risk which is under your direct control. So detection risk is the risk that you, after performing the procedures, might not be able to detect the problems. Right? So on all these grounds, which they just said, and they were all right. Right? So when I counter question, I generally try to extract things more. So all of you are absolutely right. Because of all these factors that we just discussed, it's not possible and not right to give an absolute level of assurance, because we can't say that we have eliminated the risk on a 100% basis. So absolutely right, you give a reasonable assurance. Now, what is efficient performance? Efficiency is when you are doing it in a timely and economical fashion. What is economical? With the least amount of resources used. Okay. The internal audit function's responsibility is to provide the organizations with assurance and advisory services. Assurance services and advisory services that will add value and improve the organization's operations. Now, this is coming in from part one. There are two types of services that you provide. Assurance services and the advisory services, which was earlier termed as consulting services. Now the term is advisory services under the new curriculum. So what is the difference between assurance services and the advisory services?
In assurance, you provide an opinion.
Very good. So under assurance, we are providing an opinion on something. So that is the keyword. That is the keyword that you need to look for in the exam if there is still a question. And what about advisory services? एडवाइजरी सर्विसेज में assurance opinion नहीं दोगे?
ओपिनियन नहीं देंगे इसमें, हम ओपिनियन तो नहीं देंगे इसमें हम will
फिर क्या
help
करेंगे?
the management in establishing certain processes wherein they might have they might need an expert advice, or wherever we can help, but we'll not provide the opinion. We can help them prepare some process, some guidelines.
अच्छा, okay, fair. Let's say I come to you and say, Sagar, could you please help me implement the IT controls? Now, is that an assurance engagement or is that an advisory engagement?
Implementation is the job of the management. That I might have to. I cannot term it as assurance or advisory both, I could say.
Thank God you said that. Good. So that was a trick one. Implementation is not what you can do, right? Value, see, advisory services are you providing insight, any value add to the client without assuming the management's responsibilities. तो हाँ, अगर मैं आपके पास आता हूँ बोल के कि यार, can you help me with the best practices of IT controls? You can do that. But when I come to you saying that, can you help me implement IT controls? You can do that, but then you cannot audit, right? So you need to be very careful with the role that you're taking up. Okay. So that is the difference between advisory and assurance services.
Ayush, just to add that in assurance services, there will be 3 parties, and in advisory services, there will be only 2 parties.
क्या बात है? Very good. So you remember that discussion. Good. फिर अगला difference भी बता दो फिर. Who sets the nature and scope in the advisory and assurance?
In assurance, it will be set by the auditor, and in advisory, basically by the auditee, that what he accepts.
Great. बहुत बढ़िया. चलिए, so we've discussed advisory services and assurance services. Okay. Then it says the CAE must evaluate the effectiveness of internal audit methodologies and revise them if necessary to successfully meet the goals of internal audit function. Again, the thing that we discussed, that things might need a constant revision. Reasons for updating methodologies include significant changes in professional internal audit standards and guidelines. कोई change आ गया. Legal or regulatory requirements, a change of the CAE or the board chairperson. And if you are making the changes to the methods, it should be well documented. In addition to the three reasons noted above, the organization reviews and revises its current internal audit methodologies based on changes in the strategy and business objectives. Three principles relate to review and revision. याद आया कुछ? When we say three principles relate to review and revision. Anybody remembers anything? Review and revision? Nobody. Who remembers GoPro?
Trying to recall, sir.
Trying to recall. Who remembers GoPro? जो हमने part 1 में किया था. Anybody coming from part 1 with me? Who was with me in part 1? ये सारे part 2 वाले ही.
I remember the mnemonic.
You remember the mnemonic?
GoPro, and the review and revision में there was some SIR something.
क्या बात. Good. Good to see. काम आ रही है चीजें. Okay, so I'm not going to bring that concept again. There are various elements of COSO ERM, right? One such element was review and revision. And so COSO ERM was like, there are 5 elements, and under those 5 elements, there were 20 principles. All right. So in review and revision, there were 3 of them. So it says 3 principles relate to review and revision. The organization identifies and assesses substantial changes, right? Then it says the organization reviews entity performance results and considers the risk. Performance results that deviate from target performance, if there is a gap, that may indicate any unidentified risk, new risk, opportunities to accept more risk, and so on. The organization pursues improvement of ERM. तो जो इन्होंने कहा था कि mnemonic SIR था, वो हमने ये बनाया था, that S stands for substantial changes, I stands for improvements in ERM, and risk. All right. Okay. Then it says reporting completes a feedback loop to management and the board. It provides assurance about the GRC. Periodic reports are also issued on the internal audit function's purpose, authority, responsibility, as well as performance. The CAE is responsible for management of internal audit function resources in a manner that ensures fulfillment of its responsibilities. We know that. Like any well-managed department, the internal audit function should operate effectively and efficiently. Thus, CAE is ultimately responsible for administrative activities such as well-planned budgeting and human resource management. The CAE is responsible for day-to-day operations, creating and operating a financial budget, implementing policies and procedures to provide reasonable assurance that the internal audit function has sufficient personnel selected using a well-developed criteria. आपके पास sufficient people हैं. Allocating the internal audit function's resources where they can be used most effectively. Communicating internal audit activities and engagement findings to applicable stakeholders. Preparing and monitoring time budgets to assist with meeting management deadlines or adjusting according to projected time overruns. Okay. Conducting internal audit personnel evaluation to determine what are the knowledge, skills, and competencies of your current staff, any further training needs, whether external resources are required, and compensation adjustments based on performance. CAE is responsible for developing methodologies to guide the internal audit function and for providing internal auditors with training on the methodologies. That is also the responsibility of the CAE कि आपका staff trained होना चाहिए. Okay. Then it says the form, content, level of detail, and degree of documentation of the methodologies may differ based on what is the size, nature, complexity, and maturity of the organization. Methodologies may exist as individual documents or may be collected into an internal audit manual. All right, nothing very important over here. Jumping on to policies and procedures. A large, mature internal audit function may include detailed policies and procedures in a formal operations manual. If the activity is smaller or less mature, less detailed policies and procedures may be in separate documents or audit management software program. A small internal audit function may be managed informally through daily close supervision and memos. Obviously, guys, understand, if my company is very small and I am keen to having an internal audit department with me, now I will have less formalized procedures. I won't be having manuals with me, right? Why? Because I have to look at the cost benefit analysis also. कोई चीज अगर easily हो सकती है, मैं क्यों उस पे time, effort, cost लगाऊं just to create that memo and just to make my practices at par with what the mature company does. I'll do that when I reach that stage, right? The following content generally is included in operations manual. It will have policies on various things. What is the responsibilities of the internal audit function? Compliance with mandatory guidance. What is this compliance with mandatory guidance? क्या होता है? ये जो आपके global auditing standards हैं और जो आप earlier IPPF पढ़ते थे, it has two guidelines available. So one was mandatory guidance. Some things which are mandatory, जिसमें होता था, if you remember the old course, you used to have, okay, definition of internal auditing, right? You used to have the standards. You used to have the core competencies. You used to have the ethics, right? So policies on complying with the mandatory guidance, independence of internal audit function, and objectivity of internal auditors. What is the difference between these two? Independence of internal audit function and objectivity of internal auditors. These are two words, right? Independence of audit function and objectivity of internal auditors.
So independence refers to any being free from any biases, and objectivity refers to being rational in what you are doing rather than having any hidden agenda.
Same नहीं हो गया ये? Isn't it
Overlap,
the same?
not same.
Okay, so independence is basically, I see, unbiasedness is objectivity. Objectivity is you being unbiased. Independence is when you do not have any conflict of interest, right? That suppose there is a company in which my father is the CEO. Can I be included? Can I be an internal auditor?
No, sir.
No, why?
Conflict of interest.
Independence issue.
Because you will be
I
not
am not
independent.
independent of the company, right? I should not be having any interest, vested interest in the company. It can be financial, it can be any other stuff. That is independent. So as a whole, my internal audit function has to be independent, and I have to report it to the board. That yes, on an overall basis, my internal audit function is independent. And I have to also ensure the objectivity of internal auditors. Ethics requirements, maintaining confidentiality of information and retention of internal audit records. So you need to have policies on all these things. Procedures for drafting the audit plan, drafting work programs for specific engagements, performance and documentation of engagements, communicating, monitoring and follow up. What is the process for that? And guidance on the QAIP. This QAIP was earlier a part of part 1 under the old curriculum. वहां से remove हो गया है, and we'll be covering QAIP under part 3. Okay. Management of internal audit function related to the training and certifications, continuing professional education, and regular evaluation of the auditors. Internal audit policies and procedures should be reviewed periodically by the CAE or another senior management member of the internal audit function. Okay. Managing financial, human, and IT resources. That is also very important. Now, this says, I am reading the author's note here. An internal auditor must understand the management of financial, human, and technological resources. These elements are the foundation of the effectiveness and efficiency of internal audit function. Knowledge of financial resource management, including budgeting, variance analysis, enables the internal audit function to allocate resources in accordance with the objectives of the organization. Understanding human resource management is necessary for developing a competent audit team by recruiting, selecting, and developing internal auditors who possess the necessary skill and expertise, obviously. And familiarity with technological resources allows the audit function to use tools and systems that enhance audit process, improve communication, and facilitate data analysis. By understanding these administrative matters, an internal auditor contributes to an effective audit function that evaluates and improves the GRC. Right? So we all understand why these are very important. The CAE must manage the internal audit function's financial resources. This we have just seen. You must develop a budget that enables the successful implementation of the audit strategy and achievement of the plan. Now, what will you include in the budget? The budget includes the resources necessary for the function's operations, including training and acquisition of technology and tools. The CAE must manage the day-to-day activities. This we have already read earlier. The CAE may seek the budget approval from the board. The CAE must communicate promptly the impact of insufficient financial resources to the board and the senior management. All right. We have seen this. The adequate budget should be approved by the board. Okay. Now, why do you think the budget needs to be there in the first place?
For cost benefit
Only
analysis.
for the cost benefit?
Also for the effectiveness of the audit, the budget may play some role, because if the audit is not sufficiently resourced, then it might not be effective.
Also
Okay.
optimization of the resources, because once the allocated budget is there, the auditor should also, the CA should actually know the risk assessment, and then decide that these are the resources in total that are required to carry out the functions and focus on the most important functions and the risk areas.
Absolutely. The first element of your audit process, or the very first step of your audit process, is always the pre-assessment. राइट सो क्या करोगे प्री असेसमेंट में क्या करते हो आप ये देखते हो कि यू बेसिकली ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड द कंपनी राइट व्हाट आर द ड्राइवर्स व्हाट्स द प्रोसेसेस एटसेट्रा उससे क्या पता चलता है व्हाट आर द रिस्क्स नाउ बेस्ड ऑन योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि कंपनी में क्या चल रहा है एंड व्हाट आर द रिस्क्स इन्वॉल्व्ड यू हैव अ प्लान इन प्लेस हाउ मच रिसोर्सेज विल बी रिक्वायर्ड कौन सा रिसोर्स बेटर suitable है is engagement के लिए and all such things, right? And that's your basically the budget. So it forces the management to evaluate the assumptions used and the objectives identified in the budgetary process. It helps control costs, of course. It helps to motivate the employees. Why? How? Employees कैसे motivate हो जाएंगे budget से?
Their compensation will be a part of the budget itself.
तो मतलब अगर मैं आपको बोलूं आप मेरे साथ बजट बनाओ और उसमें आपको अपनी सैलरी 10,000 दिख जाए तो आप मोटिवेट हो जाओगे?
No, not like that.
The
Basically,
target versus actual.
uh, not the target versus actual as of now. While it is while preparing the budget. See क्या होता है? While I am preparing the budget and I try to include you all, right? Now you all will feel a sense of participation, some kind of ownership. कि आपने हाँ budget बनाने में help करी है, right? So that participative aspect, that ownership aspect will be there, and that will act as a motivation trigger for you, not anything else. It is also the means of communication and coordination, of course. While preparing the budget, the CAE should consider human resources and technology requirements. The key steps of the budget process generally include defining the scope and the objective of the engagement, conducting the resource analysis, obviously, identifying the budget components, estimating the costs, developing the budget finally, reviewing and seeking approvals, and implementing, monitoring, and controlling. Now it says annual budget and engagement specific budget should be created. What is the difference? Annual budget क्या होता है and engagement specific budgets क्या होते हैं? What is the difference between annual budget and engagement specific budget?
In annual budget, the overall budget for the whole financial year may be given for the internal function. While in audit engagement specific budget, in the whole year, we might be engaging into multiple activities, multiple engagements. So there will be budget for specific engagements also. And
The why is it needed? Why the specific engagement budgets are needed?
Because the scope and objective for a specific engagement activity might be different, and we want to allocate certain part of the annual budget resources to that particular activity.
Okay.
For example, if there are any specific technological processes that we need to audit, and it may require testing the entire population, we have to incorporate data analytics, which may involve a little more budget compared to the other engagement projects.
Fair. So
And if there is any ad hoc request comes from the either management or maybe from the regulatory driven, those kind of assessment required additional budget. So yeah.
fair. You all are absolutely right. We need to have engagement specific budgets for control purposes, basically, right? So that we are actually in compliance with the annual budget, right? And there might be some ad hoc engagements. There might be some engagement that requires substantial usage of the budget, which might be very critical, very important, right? So very good. The CAE must ensure that internal audit functions human resources are appropriate, sufficient, and effectively deployed to achieve the approved internal audit plan. In formulating an approach for managing the internal audit function's human resources, the CAE should consider the organizational characteristics, what is the internal audit budget, and what are the options available for obtaining the human resources needed. Absolutely. The CAE should, to support an approach for recruiting competent internal auditors, the CAE should collaborate with HR to develop the job specifications. How does job specifications result in having a competent internal auditor?
Like the requirement for the audit staff, he can
Sorry?
specify with the HRs. So CAE can specify the requirements of the audit staff to the HR.
Okay, that means it's there under the requirement section of the JD that I need a person with Power BI skills, for example. Right? So you'll hire somebody who is equipped in Power BI only, right? So that is what we're saying, that it's very important for CAE to tell HR that what you need exactly to have that competent person in your team. Consider the benefits of recruiting internal auditors with diverse backgrounds, very important. Somebody can be skilled in IT, somebody can be skilled in tax, somebody can be skilled in environment laws, etc. Participate in recruitment activities such as job fairs and job candidate interviews. Okay. The day-to-day management of the hiring process, however, is by the HR department only. You don't have to get into the shoes of HR just because आप अपनी टीम के लिए hire कर रहे हो. Internal auditors should be qualified and competent because the selection of a superior staff is dependent on the ability to evaluate applicants. Selection criteria must be well developed. Appropriate questions and forms should be prepared in advance to include what are the qualification, background. ये तो आपको पता ही है, right? These are all the questions that you answer while you're going in for the job interview. Developing effective interviewing methods ensures that the internal audit function acquires proper set of skills, capabilities, and technical knowledge needed to accomplish the goals. Okay. There are two categories of interviews up. There can be structured interview questions and there can be behavioral interview questions. क्या difference है दोनों में? Structured interview questions मतलब जिसके answers defined होते हैं, right? So structured interview हो गया, what is 2 plus 2? आपका एक ही आंसर, right? Behavioral interview question हो गया, यार did you have this situation in your previous organization where somebody was not ready to accept 2 plus 2 as 4? How did you tackle that situation? Now that is a behavioral interview question, right? The criteria for employee, anybody of you remember any of those behavioral questions asked in your interview maybe while you were getting hired?
So most common question asked is, how do you manage the stakeholder when discussing about the audit findings, right? And when they are in disagreement, right? How do you discuss, negotiate, and make them understand about the risk and sail through with the audit findings with the stakeholders?
Okay, wonderful. Anybody else? Any other behavioral question being asked in your interview?
How do you handle a tough client if you've received bad feedback on an audit and then you have to audit the same team again? So how do you handle those situations?
Take a gun with you next time when you visit. Okay, so fair enough. But this is an interesting discussion. How do you handle a bad feedback? We discussed that you might get a bad feedback. Next time when you have to audit the same client, how would you tackle that? Because somewhere you will be having that uh, kind of biasness or mentality कि यार इसने feedback खराब किया था. How do you handle that actually?
So one suggestion provided by our senior audit team was at the start of the audit planning, you'll know what kind of audits you may do. So have informal catch-ups with the business a little in advance of the audit, just to create a context and perspective as to why we are doing the audit rather than we are not, they're gatekeepers or policemen, but we are actually trying to work as an organizational goal to enhance the risk. Framework. So creating that mindset prior to an engagement would help.
Fair. Good point. Yes. And that is why when we started the audit, there was a concept, somebody said audit announcement memo, right? Don't go as a surprise visit. Tell them, give them time to prepare, help them, get them participate to the audit process and at a lot of different places. And yes, that is why in the other parts, we've always been saying that you have to develop relationships with the audit client to a level, to a certain level. Okay. Yeah, now this is very general. I'm marking it as a self-read. Okay. But let's read this roles and responsibilities of the team members of the internal audit function. Now, audit director is a senior level position responsible for supervising the work of senior managers and the managers. Senior managers and managers oversee the entire audit process, which includes but is not limited to creating and implementing audit plans, performing the work, creating the audit reports. Senior auditors and staff auditors primarily perform the audit work and evaluate findings. The work is generally performed under the supervision of managers and directors. Specialist auditors conduct audit much the same as the other auditors. So specialist auditors means जब आपके पास कोई skill short हो जाए, so you are allowed to bring an external service provider to your team. Okay. Where is the partner? We are missing a designation here, isn't it? Big Force. So on top of this will be the CAE setting. All right. Okay. Training and development. To develop and retain the internal auditors, you should implement compensation, promotion and recognition activities. ये तो आपको पता ही है, that is there. Implement methodologies for training, evaluating performance and improving the competencies. Consider cross-functional sharing of knowledge. What is cross-functional sharing of knowledge? What is cross-functional sharing of knowledge?
Across domain knowledge that is not only the internal audit function, but other functions as well than the organization. So let's say, the
Okay.
core business of the organization itself. It could be HR, it could be IT, it could be, let's say the MM functions.
Correct. Fair. Cultivate an ethical environment. Okay. Training on the job हो सकती है, off the job हो सकती है. I am not reading this, you already know. Development programs prepare people to perform future tasks and learn new skills. Okay. Training and development programs succeed when the greatest retention of skills and knowledge is transferred to the job. Obviously, you know that. I think you can read this stuff, guys. Evaluations are important to employees as well as to the organizations. They assess the available HR, motivate them, right? That is why you have your ratings, your appraisals, etc. Again, I'm marking it as a self-read. Needs no explanation. You have all these books available, right?
No, I have to get it, Aayush.
Or you don't have this book with you. What about others?
No, I've requested the hard
No.
copy prior to session start.
Or you should have received it at the prior only. Otherwise, अरे बाबा रे. Okay. Okay. So just ask them to give you a digital copy at least, right? A hard copy will come when it will come, but just ask them to send you or email you at least the digital copies of this book. There is no WhatsApp group created, otherwise I would have shared, right? But it is what it is. Just ask them to give them the digital copy at least, because you need it today so that you can, because we'll be doing questions from this module tomorrow, right? So once we are doing those questions, you need to be able to first read the chapter yourself. Okay. It'll hardly take them a minute to send you or email you the at least the PDF. And the people who are connected with me from prior batches, just WhatsApp me, guys. I will share this PDF with you. Okay.
Because I'll WhatsApp it to you.
For the internal audit function to operate effectively, Senior management should cultivate a professional environment in which internal auditors are highly motivated to fulfill the mission of the internal auditing function. Management methodologies can enhance the internal audit function, which includes the job design, rewards, work schedules, mentoring, coaching, and constructive feedback. Basically, क्या बोलेगा? आपने अपने employees को motivate करके रखना. You have to keep your employees motivated. For that, you'll introduce a reward scheme. You will manage the work schedule accordingly. You'll mentor them, right? You provide feedback in a manner which they perceive it as a constructive feedback and all such things. Job design links tasks to a particular job. One approach is adapt people to job. Jobs to people, nahi. People to job. Job rotation. Train your employee in finance also, marketing also. So you might have seen this job rotation at a lot of places. मुझे किसने भेजा है?
I sent it, sir.
मेरे को क्यों भेज दिया? मेरे पास तो है. Okay, thank you anyways. I'll forward it the same. Okay, जो भी मुझे मांगेगा मैं इसी को forward कर दूंगा. Okay. Another job design method is to adapt jobs to the people performing them. So job enlargement is primarily intended to reduce boredom, and job enrichment is to structure the job so that each worker participates in planning. All right. Fair. Just give it a reading. It's just a good read. Rewards. What are rewards, guys? Rewards क्या होते हैं? सिर्फ monetary हो सकता है?
It can be an
Can
award or a recognition as well.
it can be a recognition as well. Very good. Just to increase the motivation. So extrinsic rewards and intrinsic rewards. Extrinsic rewards could be a financial rewards, could be acknowledgement, could be token rewards, कि आपको कुछ vouchers मिल गए, right? Intrinsic rewards are the internal satisfaction that results from certain actions. For example, आपने कोई challenging engagement complete किया, उसको complete करने के बाद जो motivation आपको, जो satisfaction आपको मिलता है, that is intrinsic reward. All right. What are work schedules? What are work schedules?
Work-life balance.
Basically, how you structure your day. Right? You should be giving time for, you should be giving time to the employees to enjoy life as well, at least theoretically. Okay. So, yeah, so help them with their work-life balance, at least theoretically. Okay. Introducing flexibility to work scheduling can positively affect worker motivation. यार एक बात बताओ, many of you might be managing the teams. What is your take on letting employees work from home? What is your experience of having employees work from home?
Generally observe that people who are already into the profession, like a little more senior compared to freshers, I've seen productivity increase with work from home because there's a sense of accountability. But for a little more junior people, hand holding needs to be provided. So it's kind of subjective.
Yeah, same observation. Anyone else? What do you think? And absolutely right. At a senior level, definitely work from home can be an increase in productivity because you take ownership. You're accountable. But ये जो freshers आते हैं, बाबा रे, इनको handle करना बहुत difficult होता है. You know, when I hire for my company, it's very difficult to let them work from home. But anyhow, yeah, so that is one way to motivate them. Mentoring and coaching, again, I'm marking this for your reading, nothing very technical. Constructive feedback. Okay, what is the difference between feedback and constructive feedback? What is constructive feedback?
Providing feedback with areas of improvement, something that they can learn and grow ahead in their career as well, rather than just giving negatively, providing it in a package in a positive way, which gives a sense of direction.
Okay, so feedback is कि आपने यार blunt feedback कि यार गलत है तो गलत है. So constructive feedback is how do you navigate your way around that to tell them, yes, this is wrong, and these are the areas of improvement, so that the other person also should not feel that you just uh, pointed out a gun, right? So that is a constructive feedback, and if the feedback is constructive, it acts as a positive motivator. Basically, at managers and above level, you have your entire trainings which are conducted just on the constructive feedback only. Basically, how do you tackle your team? Okay. Technological resources, the CA is also responsible for ensuring the internal audit function has technology related to perform needed to perform their function effectively and efficiency. The internal audit function should use tech to improve the effectiveness and efficiency. Examples of such technology include audit management system, the GRC mapping applications, data analytics, any communication and collaboration. The CA is responsible for reporting technology limitations of the effectiveness and efficiency to the internal audit function to the board and the senior management. In assessing the feasibility of acquiring new technologies, the CAE must consider the financial budget constraints, obviously. Right? That is it. You should be using tech to do things. We're using Power BI to generate reports, to present that visualizations, idea to maybe sample it, and a lot of other tools. All right. So that was module number 1 for you. Just the introduction to internal audit. All right, now let's try some questions. Let me see. What access do you have for the questions, guys? Different people might be having different accesses. What access do you have for the questions here?
Google Form.
Google Form?
Glime, sir.
You have Climb, okay. How Google Form means?
No, I mean,
Oh,
taking the questions from through the Google Form.
oh, you're coming from Arpit's background, Arpit's classes.
Yeah, a year back.
Oh,
Yes.
Google Form is not work. Doesn't work, guys. So don't go in for the Google Form. आपको you might have been provided with the LMS access, right? By VGLD team.
Yes.
Even if you don't have GLIME, you have that LMS access. So LMS में there is audit ACE included, right? GLIME is, it's okay, guys. If you do not have access to the GLIME, it's absolutely fine. You will have access to audit ACE, right? Audit ACE में वो सारे GLIME वाले questions हैं, right? So even if you have access to the audit ACE, go to your LMS, log into the LMS. On the left hand side, you'll find that audit ACE, right? Go to audit ACE and you can start doing the questions. It has the same questions as there in GLIME. Okay. Now Audit ACE is a VGLD's software. So
But where do I
they
find it, Ayush? Maybe I've just logged into
saying, guys,
VGL.
it's absolutely fine if you do not have GLIME access. All right. It is fine if you do not have GLIME access. Okay. You will have access to Audit ACE. It has the same level of questions. Okay. And you might find same questions also. So I will be taking up the questions on screen with you. Okay, we'll do it tomorrow in the session. I will be taking it up in the screen on the screens tomorrow. So don't worry, you can do those questions with me, and then if you have GLIME, you can go to the GLIME software. If you have Audit ACE, you log into your Audit ACE to practice those questions. All right, so don't worry about the questions. All right, any doubt with respect to the concepts that we have covered today as the first module? I think experienced लोगों को तो problem नहीं होगी, but the people who were relatively new to audit, you are okay with this? No, Atika, it will not take 14 classes, obviously. See, why they have kept it as 14 classes is because the sessions are of 2 hours each. Right? It's not of 3 hours. So aaj 2 hours, kal 2 hours, and then it's 2 hours. Okay, so if you do not even have Audit ACE in the LMS, you talk to the team. So Aishwarya, how were you able to do the questions for earlier parts?
So this is the first class I've joined, sir.
This is the first class. Okay. So just talk to the team. Where can you access the practice questions from?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So actually, see, it depends. Why Audit ACE? Some people have Audit ACE and some people have GLIME access. Is because it depends on the package that you have selected. I think they have different packages. One higher charge with GLIME, lower charge with Audit ACE, something like that. I don't know exactly. So it's absolutely fine. So just ask the team that where can you get the practice questions from, and they'll be able to help you out with it. All right. Any other question with respect to the logistics?
So Ayush, in each session, would we be doing like 1 day theoretical, 1 day questions, or would it be a mix?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you are able to do a concept in 1 hour or 1.5 hours or so, we'll take up the questions then and there in that class only. Right? Because if you take 2 sessions, then you need 12 classes.
Okay.
But we should be able to wrap it up early. Okay. Since it's the first session today, just try arranging the modules, guys. कि आप question practice तभी कर पाओगे जब आपने एक बार पढ़ा होगा अपने आप, और बिना पढ़े question करोगे motivation down हो जाएगा. Questions नहीं करोगे exam clear नहीं कर पाओगे. Right? The only key to pass CIA is to practice a lot of questions. All right. So that is for sure. So please make sure that you ask the team to give you the questions access. Okay. What else? Any other question?
I have
Those
actually,
who were with me in the previous, just a second, Anuradha. Those who were
yeah.
with me in the previous batches and have access to my phone number or WhatsApp number, You can, if you don't get the books, you can WhatsApp me. I'll give you the PDF. All right. For the people who are new and who have not done it with me earlier, please talk to the team. They'll be able to help you out with the PDF. If they don't still revert, then I'm there to help you out.
Ayush, also,
Okay.
if we've opted for both, like the LMS and the climb, which would you recommend that we practice first?
Any, it's the same. प्रैक्टिस फर्स्ट नहीं, एक ही से कर लो, इतने सारे तो आप नहीं कर पाओगे. Do use one only, whichever you feel is you're comfortable with the UI. You can follow that. It's the same questions, same questions. ACE में भी same है, GLIME में भी same है. GLIME है तो कर लो उससे, नहीं तो same questions. Okay. Any other question with respect to the logistics or the chapter that we have covered?
I actually had a query on this fraud risk
Yeah.
management portion. So generally is like in other companies and all of this, any idea whether fraud risk management is integrated with the internal audit charter and whether the CA carries out the entire process of fraud risk management or only investigates initially and hands it over to another department for penalties and other aspects. So
If you're suspicious of a fraudulent activity, right, your immediate next step would be to take more evidence on it, right? And then what you have to, you cannot just start the investigation at that moment. You have to, as your part of responsibility, you have to recommend investigation to the management. Now, if they want you to do that investigation or they want you to be a part of that investigation process, that's a separate case, right? But you yourself cannot start the investigation process as yet. If whenever you find something out which might be fraudulent or which might indicate a fraudulent activity, you have to recommend investigation, right? Because you are not equipped to handle investigation, right? The forensics have to come in. All right, but yes, you can be a part of that investigation process. You can go around the investigation if the management asks you to do, right? And if you are doing something like that, of course, it has to be there in the charter.
Ayush, I have two follow-up questions on the same matter.
Yes. Yes.
One is whether the CAE can be head of investigation, that is the chief of internal vigilance also. And the second one is whether the vigilance is that the investigation is a activity which is could be separately handled or it can be a part of risk management function.
Generally, it is separate activity investigation.
And on the first part?
The first part is yes, you can, but again, that's what I'm saying. You have to recommend investigation. Now, if the management wants you to head it, then you can do it. Right, but of course, you'll have to get the experts from outside. Forensics have to come in because things will be used in legal cases.
Yeah, one more question related to it. In case there are some process lapses which may lead to external fraud, means
Which may lead to?
Which may lead to external fraud, means I have some process gaps in my control processes and some external party makes benefit of it, out of it. But I don't know in that case, whether it is to be reported as a fraud or what?
Help me with an example.
Let's say I have some XYZ process. In that process, there is some gap, which some may say, which we will come to know to the external stakeholders, maybe the users or customers. And say if the Amazon is having some gap where it is refunding the amount and delivering the goods also. And if customers comes to know and they try to make misuse of it, then in such cases, whether all those who have misused will become the fraudulents or what?
No, all those who have misused will not become fraudulent. that process itself is faulty, is deficient. The controls are failing then in that case.
Yeah.
Right? And if the controls are failing, it's not a fraud, but it's something that you need to highlight to the management that there is a leak. Right? Unless, of course, there is a person who is talking to the customer that you keep the good, get the refund and pay me 10% commission. Then that's
something same. That's something same. What I mean.
Yeah, if that is the case, of course, it's a fraudulent activity. You have to report it, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. All right, guys. That is it for the day. Any other question for me? No more question or
just
yes?
sorry,
No,
last question, right? Just a clarification. So I'm just doing this part 3, and I've not done the part 1 yet. So is it okay if I'm comfortable after doing all the practices, if I can take part 3 exam first and then go for the part 1 as and when it is completed?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Wonderful. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining in. Have a wonderful day ahead. I'll see you tomorrow morning then.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.